What can we do about violence? One answer is to grow fewer violent children. But instead of discouraging youthful violence, American culture nurtures it in some powerful ways. Children learn destructive lessons from parents who abuse them. The proliferation of guns puts a lethal trigger in easy reach of troubled tempers, and the marketplace turns violence into pleasure and profit. In this broadcast, we'll look at some solutions to family violence, violence by gunfire, and mayhem in the media. By one account, 3 million children ages 3 to 17 are exposed to parental violence every year. There are some 4 million reported incidents of domestic violence against women every year. The testimony of battered mothers reveals that children usually witness the abuse, and studies show those children to be at greater risk for problems later on. It was this homegrown terror that motivated Mark Wynn toward a new mission as an officer of the law.
She gave me a description of him.
He's still out there somewhere. He's supposed to have a gun.
All right, stay on the line with me, okay? You're going to have two people. You've got one girl that's been shoved up against the wall and she's bleeding. And you've also got a lady that's 6 months pregnant on the floor. Okay.
I have a 3-year-old daughter. I'm quite scared. He has been here several times.
Okay, do you have your weapon on you now?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay.
Description on the truck, so you're supposed to be going to get dynamite, coming back to blow up the apartment.
He slams her up into my door in my house.
He busted on our back window.
Drink, or does he have a bad temper, or does he do drugs? Or...
Drink. And I think he does drugs too.
I got stoned the other night. When I got home, we had a horrible fight. She said, "What's the matter with you? Ain't you got no respect?" I skipped around the circle and I took a hit.
So what kind of a vehicle's he gonna be in if he leaves?
In this country western mecca, 911 operators are inundated with domestic violence calls on a Friday night.
Do you know if he carries any weapons or not? I don't know. Okay.
Last year, these 911 operators answered 18,000 domestic violence calls.
It takes an unbelievable amount of courage for someone to call on someone they care about. They're not calling on a prowler. They're not calling on somebody that they've seen break into a house somewhere. They're calling on the very person who they married.
Sergeant Mark Wynn is an 18-year veteran of the Nashville Police Department. Within the past 6 months, with lots of help from the community, he has been able to create one of only 6 domestic violence units in the country. He supervises 35 police officers and detectives who strictly deal with domestic violence. And they treat domestic violence offenders just like any other violent suspect.
When we went online here, we were looking at somewhere around 800 calls a month. Now we're looking at somewhere between 12 and 1,300 calls per month. I'm talking about solid cases to investigate. And some would say, well, look what you've done. You've created more crime. And my answer is, no, it's always been there. Let's go, KO. We got a location on him.
They're looking for a suspect who was arrested several months ago for beating his wife and kidnapping their kids.
He's been kind of elusive with us. The officer has been trying to track him down, but he's on foot. He's a crackhead. We've got an outstanding warrant for him for assault.
Tonight, he's stalking his wife and children.
He's been calling from a local restaurant. So we're going to the local restaurant so we can't locate him. There's been a guy on your payphone out here, black-headed guy.
It's gone now.
How long has he been here?
It's been about 10 or 15 minutes ago.
Where did he go? Do you know? Which way, to the right or left?
Even while they try to track him down, the suspect is still harassing the victim.
See if you can't find out where he's at.
That's what she's doing.
His wife, Denise.
Hey.
She contacts them on their beeper.
The Holiday Inn Vanderbilt.
It's right across the street. What? 064. You see a white guy in a red coat and blue jeans on the phone, black-headed?
He got away, but 2 hours later, they found him back at the same restaurant and arrested him.
A good arrest does not equal a conviction. A good arrest stops violence.
He won't stop calling, he won't stop coming by the house, and he assaulted me on Thursday night.
Because not only does it offer protection, immediate protection for the children and the mother, it sends a message to the children, this is wrong, and when you do this, you go to jail.
Threatening suicide tonight. He tried to hit me with the car. I've had my nose reconstructed. I've had my cheekbones this cheekbone, my nose reconstructed from him hitting me.
These officers of Nashville's domestic violence unit have the right to press charges in court on behalf of women and children.
She's saying that you're calling her?
No, ma'am, I'm not.
And that you're going by the house?
In Nashville, we've got zero tolerance for batterers. What we do in our city is we stop the violence immediately.
That I have been there all day.
In the system, they're prosecuted by the police officers who investigate the cases. They go to court.
Do you have an order of protection against them?
Yes, I do. I've had 2.
We help the victims with orders of protection to maybe slow down or completely stop future incidents of violence.
And I've already filed for divorce. I live by myself. I'm just asking for him to leave me alone.
Stay away from her. Don't call her, don't go around there, don't walk around. Do you live?
We can't expect the DAs and we can't expect the judges to prosecute people with flimsy evidence. We present as much evidence as we can get our hands on so we can show the court how serious it is. And the court can only act when they've got a good sound case in the courtroom.
Even though he has kept on harassing his wife, he can get out on a $2,000 bond by paying only a $60 deposit.
A lot of communities, they lump this in with other crimes, and it's not other crimes. It's the most serious crime. It's the most committed and least reported crime in America. And then the second notice, we can arrest on criminal trespass. Well,
back at headquarters, Police Detective Carol Matthews and Sergeant Wen are on another case. Detective Matthews is trying to catch this woman's abuser. She was brutalized for 96 hours in front of her young son.
She had been held virtually hostage by her husband for 4 days. He had beat her with this. He had wrapped this sock around the end out of niceness to keep her from being cut by the very edges of this. Her son is 4 years old. He is very, very protective of his mother. He's not left her side. He seems to be a really well-mannered little boy. She's very protective of him, too. Somebody needs to help these people.
We want our officers to go out and treat people with respect, don't take their dignity away from them, and treat them like victims of crime and deal with their problems. Because what's happened traditionally with law enforcement is that the victim is blamed a lot for this crime. Why did you stay? What did you say to make him do this? I've heard these kind of things. It's victim blaming. And there's nothing right about that. And then the victim automatically says, even you don't care.
Domestic violence. Sergeant Mark Wynn on police station tonight.
We had 83 total in murders, and 25 were directly related to domestic violence.
Let's go back to the telephone lines to Barbara from Nashville.
I just wanted to make a comment on the fact that my son and I were both in a domestic violent home. It had some pretty traumatic effects on both of us. In fact, my son is now suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder.
Children don't even have to be touched physically by an offender to feel the pain and the suffering that's involved in domestic violence. Unless we offer at least basic safety for the mother, we can't expect basic safety for the children.
Well, it hasn't stopped. As soon as he got out of jail, he started calling her today.
What we need to do from this point on is we need to start charging him instead of having her sign the warrants.
Yeah. Her father said that maybe she should get a gun, but I don't think that's the answer to her problems. If she gets a gun with the small children in the house, it's no telling what could happen.
Denise's husband is at it again. He's constantly harassing her on the phone. So at her request, domestic violence officers are tapping her phone for stalking evidence.
These are the victims who won't step up to me and you and say, I'm a victim of crime, because they don't know how, or they've been told not to. And if we can't protect their lives, then why are we here?
But you're not supposed to be called. What about when you hit me? What about when you strained my arms? What about when you...
After 8 more calls from her husband, police had the evidence they needed.
You know what? Tell it to a judge.
Let's get a harassment warrant on it.
Your Honor, we would ask for a high bond in this matter because apparently the message isn't getting across to this young man.
He's got the message. How much plainer could it be?
Well, evidently he doesn't understand
But
it.
he's just not, he understands. You understand, don't you? Because you speak English, don't you? And you understand.
Our courts are our partners. They're part of this process. When they hold them accountable for the assaults, you see stiffer sentences, and the message begins to get out that if you hit your wife, if you hit your children in Nashville, you're going to go to jail. All of us, not just police, but the courts, the prosecutors, the social services, the community, the churches, the schools, everybody to wake up and say, until we hold people accountable in the family, and not just say it, I mean do it, then we're going to keep generating violent criminals year after year after year after year. Because I was almost a violent criminal. I'm telling you, I by the grace of God, I'll say it again, and my mother's strength, I could be sitting here today talking to you in a prison uniform instead of a police uniform.
Sergeant Mark Wynn grew up in a violent home. In fact, he tried to kill his stepfather when he was 7 years old, who stopped him from beating up his mother.
Children learn to be violent and they bring it into their adult life. We were taught to be violent by a violent personality who was my stepfather. Many times the police had come to my home, and many times they walked away. Many times the neighbors heard the screams and saw the fights in the yard and knew what was going on, but never called the police. My stepfather was an alcoholic, but he was violent sober and he was violent drunk. The only time he wasn't violent was when he was unconscious. And a lot of kids are in jail today because they've killed an abusive parent. As a matter of fact, a higher number of children are in jail today for killing their abusive parent than they are for ride-by shootings or drug deals. So every time that I stand up and I speak against domestic violence, I'm standing up and I'm speaking against him and what he did to us.
Among crimes committed in Davidson County, Tennessee, family violence is second only to larceny. Chances are it's high where you live too. To reduce it, the whole community has to stigmatize it. So you may want to ask your own police to consult Sergeant Wynn, who can show them how it's done.